Welcome to Evil Done Badly, the worst true crime podcast in the entire universe. My name is Dick, and I'm thrilled to be here. We've got a fun story for you today, and it's the closest thing we've ever had to a happy ending. Now, it's not a pleasant story, but it is kind of uplifting, so let's jump right in by pouring a beverage, grabbing our well-proportioned nurses, and firing up the theme song. This episode of Evil Done Badly is brought to you by the wide world of paranormal investigations and ridiculous thrifter groups over on Facebook. They're way more popular than we are, and with good reason. Those groups are actually entertaining, unlike this podcast. So why does Dick keep making them if they're not entertaining? Well, he's deluded himself into thinking people enjoy it, so he's going to keep going with it. At least in the short term, for sure. But either way, we're glad to have you few listeners here, and I hope you'll stick around. Whether you enjoy it or not, that's not really important. Now, let's get on with it. Susan Kuhnhausen was a registered nurse in Oregon in 1988. Now, she was single, overweight. Those are her mom's words, not mine. And she was, well, looking for love. Her mother took it upon herself to put a personal ad in the local paper on her behalf. She's that kind of person. She just really cares. And the ad went something like this. Single white female, 33, overweight, but not over life. Seeking single male who wants more out of life than just slender. Okay, Mom. That's definitely not the most flattering thing I've ever heard, but it attracts at least one interested party. So the reply comes back. Quote, my name is Mike. I'm a 39-year-old DWM. I enjoy most things in nature, from wandering in the ape caves at Mount St. Helens to walking on the beach at sunset. End quote. Now, this guy, well, he sounds like a keeper. Though I'm not sure what DWM stands for. But let's take a guess here. Delinquent world-class masturbator? Yeah, that sounds about right. That's probably it. Who writes this stupid shit? Anyways, they hit it off and they spend the next few weeks talking to each other on the phone and getting to know each other orally. They would get to know each other orally after they met in person later on. Now, they hook up in real life the following month, and they go on dates to such happening locations as the Botanical Gardens and the Duck Pond. This guy is totally doing his best to seem like a sensitive dude so he can get it in her pants. So that works. And a year later, they run off to Nevada and they get married. Yay! True love wins again. They lived happily ever after, and that's the end of the story. And that's the end of this week's episode of Evil Done Badly. See y'all next week. Nope, that's not the end of the story. And by lived happily ever after, well, I mean it went down the toilet pretty fast. See, Mike here is not as swell of a guy as he originally appeared to be. He had PTSD from being a switchboard operator in the Army. That's a little goofy, isn't it? It's a little suspect. And, well, after they got married, he more or less stopped pretending to have any kind of personality at all. So she's tied down, and, well, he's turned into some kind of losery guy. And according to Susan, Mike's philosophy was, quote, life is a shit sandwich, and every day you take another bite until you die. End quote. That's actually kind of clever, but he still seems like too much of a cunt to be likable. The trips to the flower garden ceased, and the ducks are very hungry because, well, they stopped feeding them. Now, as useless as Mike was, he took a janitorial supervisory job at Oregon Video, which was the parent company of a porno studio. Yeah, I bet they needed lots of janitors. And he was a bit of a possessive loser who wanted to know where Susan was at all time and nagged her every time she spent any money. What kind of a dick is this guy? She's the fucking nurse here! Mind your own damn business, jizz mop boy. I mean, there's probably a cleanup in Studio 4 right now. That's the one with the gay midgets. Get on that, Mike, and stop worrying about what Susan's doing. Anyways, after 17 years of this, Susan decides that she's done with Mike. He burps a lot, and he's generally a whole bigger loser than she would like to be associated with. So she decides to leave him. Now, she didn't hate him, but she figured she'd be way happier without him. She booted him out of the house in 2005, and he went to live with his dad. Now, she did remain in contact with him and would occasionally ask him to house sit the cats from time to time. She also didn't change the security code to her front door once she kicked his lazy ass out. So she goes on about living her more happy, Mike-less life and takes his name off her life insurance. Mike does not have a whole lot going for him at the moment. He gets to mop up all the jizz he could ever want, but I'm not sure that's exactly living the good life. He does, however, remain the sole owner of Susan's house in the unlikely event that Susan passes away. I don't see how anything can come from these set of specific circumstances, do you? So let's fast forward to September 6, 2006, and Susan is coming home from her shift at a Portland hospital. She gets home, lets herself in, finds a note from Mike. Not that out of the ordinary. By now, Mike has lost his job at the jizz factory, and things are really going downhill for him. The note says that he's unable to look after the cats this weekend because he's going out of town to the beach to let his gut hang out for a few days and catch some sun. Susan doesn't give a shit where he is, so she just goes about getting herself ready to spend the night relaxing. She's still in her scrubs, and she heads upstairs to her bedroom. She takes a quick look down the hall and notices that her room, well, it's abnormally dark for this time of day. She's wondering if she accidentally left the curtains closed. It doesn't really bother her enough to make her overly suspicious. But once she gets inside her room, it becomes perfectly clear why it was peculiarly darkened. See, there's a scruffy unknown man standing there with a hammer. This is quite shocking, especially after this scuzzy fucker lunges at her and whacks her on the temple with the hammer. So, this idiot, who's standing in her room with the hammer, taking shots at her, he picked the wrong nurse to fuck with. See, Susan had been an emergency room nurse for around 30 years and was well accustomed to dealing with violent wackos. Unfortunately for this moron, the nurses at the hospital took regular self-defense classes to help prepare them for working in such a turbulent environment. She quickly realizes that this stupid cunt is here to kill her, so she digs in her heels, closes the gap between them, and works her way inside while gaining control of the hammer. She pounds him a few times and demands to know why he's in her house, attempting to murder her. He doesn't answer, but he does muster these two words. Quote, "You're strong." End quote. So this scruffy dude, he manages to wrestle the hammer back from her, but she starts biting him on the thighs and nutsack. And before he can retaliate to all this, he's being strangled by Susan's abnormally strong hands. They roll around on the floor a bit, exchanging bites and the odd fist punch, and Susan eventually has enough of it, so she gets up and tries to run away. Now, the hairy guy, he has a job to do, so he chases after her and tackles her, and he tries to subdue her once again. They wind up back on the floor, only this time, Susan is on top, and she's applying a chokehold, and this guy's turning purple. He's wiggling around, trying to flip Susan off. But she's not having it. She uses her ninja skills to keep him from being able to move. And eventually, he passes out, and he's unable to move at all. She gets off of him. She gets off this wimpy dirtbag guy, grabs the hammer, and runs next door to call 911. Now, the neighbor calls 911, and she's talking to the operator, and she asks if Susan needs an ambulance. And she says, no. Susan's okay, given the circumstances, but the asshole lying in her hallway might need one. She says that this unconscious asshole who's lying in the hallway also just might be dead, which is fucking amazing. The only thing that would make this story better is if she gave him a flying elbow off the top rope. I hope she landed a few of those. Either way, Susan needs her own action figure. I would totally buy that. This is an incredible story. This fucktard hides in her room, smashes her with a hammer. She kicks the absolute shit out of him. It gives me goosebumps. The guy died, by the way. So, yeah, it's all very heartwarming. Susan is such a hero that in the middle of the actual scuffle, she offered to call this dickwad an ambulance if he would just break down and tell her who was the other asshole who sent him after her. He didn't take her up on it. He kept his trap shut, and, well, he got smited by the most badass nurse you've ever seen. Woo! This is incredible. Now, the police, they still have to get to the bottom of it, even though Susan's okay. So the police stop by to check out the scene, and they discover the body of Edward Haffey. They find his backpack in the basement, and it contained incriminating items, such as rubber gloves, diabetes pills, and a completely incriminating bottle of Hershey's chocolate syrup, which I'm told is the #1 choice of ice cream topping amongst incompetent hitmen everywhere. That's quite the honor. Way to go, Hershey's. Now, in this backpack, they find his daily planner. That's a book us old people used to keep track of appointments in. Whether we planned on going to them or not, we would use an actual pen and write on the paper. So when they looked through it, they found an entry for the date, September 4th, 2006. And that's 2 days before the attack. And all it said was, call Mike, get letter. And below it, it listed the phone number that matched who? Mike Kuhnhausen. The letter that they're talking about is the one that Mike used to say he was going to the beach to get some sun on his taint. If Mike wasn't the primary suspect before, he sure as fuck is now. How about that? So it turns out Ed and Mike already know each other, and Ed was another jizz mopper from the adult film studio. But initially, Mike denies having anything to do with the murder and says, quote, just because I know the guy doesn't mean I know anything, end quote. Yes, Mike. Of course not. So, how did Haffey get in the house in the first place? Well, there were no signs of forced entry, and someone disabled the alarm while Susan was at work. Who's the only guy who knew the code? You, Mikey, you fucking moron. So it's not looking too good here for you, Mike. Starting to smell a little stale, a little funky. And on top of that, a few witnesses come forward who tell various stories concerning Mike attempting to recruit them in helping make his wife disappear, saying it was, well, part of an insurance scam. Now, good luck, sir. So, Mike has to prove his innocence. He proves his innocence by buying a gun and running away and hiding. Now, they track him down a week later in the parking garage of a different hospital, and he claims he was on his way to check himself into the psych ward because he didn't have any reason to go on living anymore. Now, the day after the arrest is made, Susan files for a long overdue divorce and probably rushes home to change the entry code on the front door security panel. So Mike winds up pleading guilty to renting a hitman, and he gets sentenced to 7 years of having his face smashed with a frying pan. Now, under normal circumstances, 7 years is a pretty long time. For Mike here, I mean, he would still have a few good years left when he finally gets out. So Susan starts preparing for the inevitability of his release. She starts taking shooting lessons and moves to a secluded cul-de-sac where she had enough land to build a gravel moat around the house so she could hear anything that comes within a certain distance. She will kick Mike's fucking ass if he gets within 10 miles of that place. Now, Mike's in prison, and he would still never admit to anything, despite the guilty plea. And, well, he never got the chance to step on Susan's gravel. He died of cancer about 3 months before he was due to be let out, and as much as I would have liked to see him live long enough for Susan to rip his chest open, tear out his pathetic tiny heart, and bite off a hunk, well, that would have been very, very awesome, but I'm glad it worked out this way. I'm glad she never had to deal with Mike again in person on the outside. Fuck that guy. And fuck that halfy cunt guy too. Turns out earlier, he had done a 9-year sentence for arranging to have his ex-girlfriend killed. She was found decomposing alongside a riverbed. Well, he hired a hitman, and whoever he hired to knock off his ex-girlfriend was a way better hitman than him. Ed here got his ass royally handed to him on his first attempt. Susan 1, Edward 0. You suck, Ed, and you're dumb. Apparently, Mike offered him 50 grand to kill Susan. Now, what are the chances that this unemployed spooge wiper was going to pay him anything, let alone $50,000? Fuck's sakes, what a bunch of fucking dummies. But these cunts are dead now. Yay! Good for them. Susan no longer goes by the last name Kuhnhausen, and she still feels the effects of the attack. She still gets overcome with emotion from the incident, and she has some totally understandable paranoia. She has retired from nursing and currently works with a justice organization in Portland. So she's doing the best she can to move on with her life while giving others hope in the process. Susan, good on you for pummeling that low-life piece of shit into the ground. You're a hero and an inspiration. I hope you are doing well, and I loved your story. And there you have it. Another pitiful episode of the worst true crime podcast ever. Evil Done Badly is in the books. This was a fun episode. And if you would like to reach out and suggest future fun episode topics, we can be reached on Instagram or YouTube at Evil Done Badly, or by email at evildonebadly@gmail.com. Thank you for stopping by. Tell your friends so they can find out how pitiful we are as well. My name is Dick, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.